I'm gonna unite the 6 strings and destroy all music, except for rock!
If Barb collects all the strings, our music will be destroyed forever.
How are we gonna hug our way out of this one?
We need to go undercover.
With fashion!
Let's go save the world!
Cool.
This is Rogers TV.
Okay, so welcome back to Out of the Fog. I'm sitting here with this fine gentleman, the charming and talented and pretty busy Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Mr. Dwight Ball.
Good to see you again, Jason.
Yeah, sort of an interesting way for things to pan out, I guess. The last time I ran into you, we were in the Rogers studio, and you had just announced your resignation.
Well, yeah, that seems like, almost a year ago right now, but it hasn't been that long, but things have changed considerably since then.
So how's that resignation going?
Well, I still will not be running again. Just don't know when the election will be, but it's important now to have the experience of being Premier of this province for the last almost 5 years to be able to continue on in this health crisis that we're seeing within our province. So, that's my big focus right now.
Of course,
The future for everyone that plans on retiring or raising a family in this province. So that's priority one for me right now.
It is sort of a really swift change from saying, I'm going to step back, to now you're sitting next to Doctors Haggie and Fitzgerald, and everybody is watching you on a daily basis to a degree that, I'm going to make the assumption in your particular political career is sort of unprecedented.
It was, it's a different time. There's no question. But I think the level of exposure that we're seeing people in faces that, most living rooms and people within the province would not have seen them in this element. But it's what we've been doing for a long time. But, this is unprecedented when you see what's happening just not only in Newfoundland and Labrador, but across our country, around the world. And people are nervous. They're terrified of what the future would look like. So it's important that we continue to get the communication out there, so we put ourselves out there on a daily basis. And I think people, not just in Newfoundland and Labrador, but they're seeing premiers right across this country that they've never seen before. Small teams, I will say, people working from homes, but we have a small team here that work extremely hard from daylight to dark, with a focus on this health crisis and actually preparing too what's coming after this, which will be some of the economic issues that we'll continue to deal with as well.
Is there a little bit of a sense of a reprieve that you can focus on doing the job without everybody always having to be, do you know what I mean?
I see your point. I think I would, when you look at being in a health crisis and so many people impacted, some of the other things that you talk about, different elements of our population are impacted in different ways. Of course, Muskrat Falls or oil prices or all the other things that you deal with within politics and just governing a province. When you have so many people around that are there to support decisions and there's mechanisms in place. Well, in this crisis, in this state of emergency that we're seeing right now, a lot of that structure is just not there anymore. And everyone now is focused on this health crisis. So the experience that have gotten you through, since the 10 years in politics, all those lessons that you'll learn, and it really comes down to about relationships with the federal government, with community leaders as well. But those relationships are much stronger. There's less people, but yet you draw on the experience that you have gotten through all these years of working within government, and you then bring that focus right down to people's living rooms and dining rooms every day, either through FaceTime or through what we're doing right here or through mainstream media. So you really get into living rooms every day and just provide that level of comfort. That's my job right now, is to let them know that the experience is there. We listen to their concerns. We understand what's happening. We have some great cheerleaders in our province as well that are really stepping up and recognize the great work that those, frontline, those essential workers are doing. And then trying to then, as we work through this crisis, make sure that the province then we start beginning to put the pieces back together for what I think will be, I'm sure it will be a good future within our province. But, for young people, from seniors through those middle-aged people within our province right now, making sure that they get through this health concern so that they come out of this, ready to get back to work and have some normal life, whatever that is, and that's
Yeah,
something
the
I wonder.
normal life part is really interesting to me now because I mean, wearing masks outside or gloves to the grocery store, that's new for us here. But that's not a new concept. Like if you search through Google Maps and you do Street View on some random street in Shanghai or Beijing or somewhere where there's been a lot of pollution to a heavier, denser area than there has been here. I mean, that's not strange. People can wear masks to the grocery store for a very long time. So some of these things are sort of new normals, possibly.
Well, absolutely. You think about being a Newfoundlander and Labradorian, and you got a tendency, like we were kind of, hugging people, shaking hands with people, patting people on the back, just being there to encourage people. That's kind of who we were. And so right now it's very different. I know on this weekend for the first time in well over a month, since mid-March. I mean, just think about it. I mean, literally a month ago, you could fly anywhere around this province. You could fly anywhere across this country. You could go into the U.S. People were doing their thing, and literally within a month, all of those things that were very normal in our life, 4 or 5 weeks ago, are now discontinued, and you can't. Matter of fact, you're encouraged to actually stay away as opposed to come away. So now we've and I know I was out for a walk on Saturday, which was the first time just to get out for an hour and walking alone, and you could see families and people coming towards you and saying, hi, Premier, how you doing? It's good to see you out. And you could see them just stepping to the curb and no different than me, just giving people their space. So people are very compliant. They're changed. In some ways, it's a bit awkward for us as a population to be able to do that. It is
because it's so counterintuitive to the culture that has been sort of propagated about people from Newfoundland and Labrador. It is very much unlike what you would expect.
Right. And as I just mentioned, we're known globally now through Come From Away to be able to embrace people, this kind, generous spirit that we have. And now all of a sudden we're even telling our families, not just people from outside of our province, we're telling our families to stay away. And, as you say, it's very different. And I know it particularly, very difficult on young people. You look at, imagine a 2 or 3 year old that's used to, being picked up by their grandparents, and all of a sudden the grandparents are there waving at them through a window, and people showing signs, and you're just holding up little posters and saying, here's what I've got for you, Nan. Here's what I've gotten for you, Pop. And so the world is completely changed a bit. FaceTime for seniors, very different world for them.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because you're a grandfather, correct? Let's talk a little bit about family life for you now.
Very different. Well, I've been in St. John's, and I haven't been home now and there you go. I mean, typically for me on a Friday or Saturday morning, I'd be in the airport. I'd go back to my district because I'm still an MHA. And a grandfather and, a son too. So my mother, who I haven't seen, who's 86 years old, haven't seen her, talk to her, on a regular basis, but it's not the same. You really want to be able to, take your mother and your grandchild and be able to do the things that you do, and you just can't do it anymore. And they understand this, but a little 2 or 3 year old can't understand that. They see you on the news and they see you on FaceTime and they just reach out. So it's a bit foreign, a bit different for me. One time you'd be doing announcements, virtually 2 or 3 times a week, public speaking 2 or 3 times a week, lots of, dinners and so on to be able to go to. And I enjoyed all of that. I really did. It's part of who I am, part of what politicians are. You're social creatures. You shake a lot of hands. And, that life has now changed. So you work long hours, which I enjoy with no regrets. And then you get home and you go home, you sit alone, you read a bit. And even TV has changed. So if you like sports, I did. No longer. You just listen and watch the things that are rewind, I guess, if it's the NHL or sports or golf, whatever it is. It's all stuff that you knew about. History lessons.
I did want to talk a little bit about, obviously, there's a huge importance, a huge magnitude behind every decision-making process now. Because in your position, it's always been about people's lives, but now it's about like their lives or their deaths. Like it's a totally different sort of thing. How difficult is it sort of like mentally and emotionally to have to draw those lines? Like, only 5 people can come to this funeral. Like, there has to be a line. I mean, that can't be easy.
Not easy at all, and it's no different than telling young people that, or whoever could be. I was actually dealing. I mentioned I'm in MHA, so I was dealing with a young couple just yesterday. We were kind of planning their wedding, and one was living outside the province, and how do we actually make this work? And it's very difficult to be able to say that this is the date you've got. If this is your wedding day, it's probably got to say that you might want to rethink how it's going to happen, because that day you're probably not going to have your family and friends around you that you would like to see. You mentioned, loss of a loved one, and I see this all the time now, where churches are using FaceTime, or groups are using FaceTime to have these, special events, and you're seeing your parent, and sometimes you're seeing people in palliative care, or when there's limited numbers of people there that are there to spend those last few moments of life. And I mean, very difficult to make those decisions. Realizing if I was personally in that situation, how I would feel. It's I don't think you get over those things very easily.
No, goodness, no. Definitely, you can't.
Yeah. So for me, we keep fundamental in all of this. Principle one: keep people safe. And so once you put that as your first principle, stop the spread of COVID-19, keep people safe, and then all those decisions then are based on that one principle that we keep coming back to. And then people usually understand, even though it's difficult, they understand why you make those decisions. And I think that from this experience that we're currently living through, I often wonder how this will change what we do when life gets back to some degree of normalcy. How is it we're going to interact
yourselves in government? Do you mean like what people in government will do, or people in general?
I think people in general. I just look at designer rooms that we go into now, and without a vaccine, and we don't know how long that will take. But unless there's a vaccine or something, what happens? Because this virus is in our world right now, and you could see it, come back the fall, or come back next spring, or the fall thereafter, whenever. But it's now part of our life. And if this mutates like people think it would, well then this is a health risk, and so therefore as we design meetings, design rooms, design houses into the future, who knows? Cars as an example, what change this will have. When you look at 9/11, it changed the way we travel forever.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
the question I have: will COVID-19 change the way that we socialize forever? It's something. It's one of those things that you think about when you finish a day's work and you're sitting back and just reflecting on what unfolded that day, and think about what the future will look like.
Can we talk for a second about your small team that you mentioned? And
Yeah.
for me, I'm thinking about the 3 talking heads that I see on TV every day, or on Facebook, or here on VOSIM, or watch on Rogers, which is what everybody should be doing, obviously. Everybody, it's like you're characters now. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's got a role that they've been playing, and Dr. Haggie has his little darts that he's become. There's memes of him all over the place, and Dr. Janice Fitzgerald is being idolized and worshipped as such a strong, empowered woman who is in such a big leadership role. And for me, having been an advocate in the mental health community, I've been familiar with Dr. Haggie previously, but not Dr. Fitzgerald. And there's just this sense from the public that we're idolizing our leadership to a level that maybe we haven't before, or at least for a long, long time. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to who these people are to you before the rest of the province knew them.
Well, certainly I've known, Minister Haggie for quite some time. And, what I know is a person that I've known for 5 or 6 years. I think from, Dr. Fitzgerald, she's been kind of a new face for me too, because she did her thing, in a role of public health safety. But it's just a stellar person, just solid, very genuine. Minister Haggie does a great job. Wasn't surprised at all. Back in 2015, I knew him before that when he was the president of the Canadian Medical Association. I was spending some time at the Canadian Pharmacists Association. So I've known them a long time. So this is a great team of people. And of course, we're backstopped then by, people that work, behind the scenes kind of thing, who support all of us every day. And I do have to give a big shout out too for our all-party committee. We meet every single morning. And so we've been working, together, which is something new and good as far as I can see. I think it's very refreshing. People want to see that. And then my role is just to try and, coach the team and bring the team together and keep them, focused on what we're doing. Not that that's very difficult for me to do, but it's provide that leadership when it's required and build on the experience, that we've gotten over the last 10 years.
Is that all-party committee? Like, I mean, I know you got to give the Premier's answer, but is that sort of refreshing from a personal perspective?
For me, it is. I think, my response to working with people is always about, strengthening relationships is what I've taken. And I've had the experience of working with premiers of all different party colors through my, from my time as leader here in Newfoundland and Labrador in all provinces. And I build on that. And you build those relationships when you're not in a crisis. And that's what's important with other provinces. And so when you have to work together, you have that relationship built. And so from, when, Chess and I first chatted about this and then Alison got involved, neither one of us, even blinked at the idea. No, this is the right thing to do for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. It's been working great. And, I think that you'll see the benefit of this crisis, one of the benefits of going through this health crisis, hopefully that you'll see more of this in the future as we deal with the economic crisis and some of the policy changes that we would see. We're a small province, small numbers, 40 seats. There's literally no reason for us not to be able to work together when you look at that we work for the people that we represent that elected us. Let that be principle one, public safety, health safety during this health crisis. Coming out of this, principle one should be, let's represent the people that put us in those chairs.
Are you gaining a little bit of romanticism about the job again? Like, is it not that you were sick of it or anything, but things are so different now and people are looking at you, I think, in a totally different light than they might have been when they were complaining about their electric bill or when they were complaining about something else or when oil prices were down. Well, that's Dwight's fault because obviously it's got to be somebody's fault, right? Do you look at things at a different level of fondness now that there's been a little bit of an evolution and you're doing, because obviously you're still doing the other stuff, but now you're also a figurehead, you're a face to a movement?
A couple of things. I think this 1 hour session that we do at 2:00 every day with the people, that level of engagement is a little different than what people are seeing on the evening news. We're not working in sound bites anymore. So, politicians, become known for their sound bites. So we're not seeing that. We're getting the complete answer. So here's the question. Here's how it was answered. So, the story is kind of not written. It's basically described to all our viewers during 2 to 3 o'clock every day. So people get the chance to, from that aspect of it, which is very different. You don't normally see that in the past when it comes to, the floor of the House of Assembly or your evening news or what happens on Facebook. So I think people really get to know us a little better, which is important. But I know from my own point of view, it's I've been working with the group that I've had around me. So as I said, I'm not surprised with John Agee at all. I'm not surprised with Dr. Fitzgerald. But my own visibility, I guess, I was always very comfortable because I always knew I'd do the best job that I could based on the information that I had. And now from this crisis, it's just continue to, as I said, focus on that one priority for me. And, that's kind of who we are. A lot of politicians are like that. They're genuinely really good person. They're in it for good people. They're in it for the right reason. It's just that you don't get a chance to know them like they really are in their own communities. We're just normal people.
That's kind of why I wanted to have this as a conversation and less of an interview where I send you the questions ahead of time and you can prepare an answer. And so just for anybody who's watching, that's not what happened. Like, these are topics that I find interesting, but now your personal brand as Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador is in a different place than it would have been 6 months or a year ago. And I think it's a really good time for people to open up and see a man as opposed to the person that they have all of their decisions attributed to, sort of. And I just think there's fairness to that.
I think it's important. I think it's, in the future when people make decisions, is that they base their decisions on what they know about individuals and try and find this completeness about what this individual is all about. So if what we're doing and what we're going through right now lets people reflect and focus on whatever the future decisions would be, is that I'm no different than anybody else. I get in my vehicle, I go home in the evenings, and I do the very same thing that everyone else would do. I like the outdoors. I love the outdoors. I love sports. I read, and I read about people primarily, and I do all the very same things that people do. Get your groceries. Everything is normal. And I face the same challenges at night that any father, any grandfather, any partner would do in their life. So it's all the same thing. It's just that in the morning you get up, you put your suit on, you put your shirt and tie on, you come to a different office. But I think here, especially in Newfoundland and Labrador in the last 5-6 years since I've been Premier, it's just a number of things that we've had to deal with that were very unusual. And it's only when you speak to other leaders, that you can actually, get the magnitude of what we've had to deal with in our province.
You also look back through history too, right? Like, I mean, I was thinking about this earlier. Like, it'll be a part of your legacy as Premier in these years that you had COVID and Snowmageddon and a part of Muskrat Falls. But I mean, there's only so many things in Newfoundland history. I mean, there's been wars, there's been the cod moratorium. Like, there's only a few things, if you go back there, that have this kind of magnitude. And it just seems like you've had to carry more than your share of them.
Well, it seems that way to me too on most days, but nevertheless, that's kind of the way things are. And I still think that, given the opportunity, it is a privilege to be Premier of this province, even though I'm the 13th one. So I guess it goes without saying it wasn't going to be easy from day one. But nevertheless, it is a privilege. And when I look at, and it's a honor that people have given me, and that I don't take this as my right, but a privilege for me to be able to do this. And I've done it to the best of my ability. And, right now I'll continue to, work for people in this province based on the experience that I've had, which I think is important at this, point in our history, to have that experience going through this crisis. And I'll use that to the best of my ability and then start planning for, my future, my life, and with my family and friends. That'll come. It's just going to be delayed a little bit. And I'll get back to being that person who, loves the snowmobiling, loves the, snowshoeing, loves the game of rec hockey. I've given up on making the NHL, Jason. I'm sure you have too. But
I have
just being normal again, I'm looking forward to that at some point. But I have no idea when that will be, and I'm in no rush. The thing to be is to get through this particular point in history.
Well, I think the majority of people would agree that at this particular point in your career as leader of our governing party, we're doing okay. So thank you very much for your work. Thank you very much for keeping us safe. And thank you very much for taking a half hour to talk to me.
Well, I appreciate this opportunity. It's a great discussion. It's one we get to know each other a bit better, and one that I know through all of this, I've seen a great group of people in this province that once again are stepping up, and I want to thank them publicly for that as well.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
All right, girls.
Mom, you said it's played again.
Workplace injuries hurt the most at home.
Blood in the urine is the most common symptom of bladder cancer. Don't ignore this warning sign. not even once.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. That was a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. Feels like Mr. Dwight Ball enjoyed it. And not such a bad guy. It's really interesting to see behind the mask. Pardon the pun. And he's a cool, calm, collected cat. And I think it's nice to have somebody like that leading charge these days. Thank you very much for watching Out of the Fog from Jason's couch. And we'll see you.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
What do you say we talk about some of the great Canadian game shows? Canada seems to have the largest singular swath of talent.
I think the popularity of game shows is just as strong today as ever.
Canadians do fun really well.
They entertain an awful lot of people.
Behind every Canadian game show, there's a story.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will endeavor to describe the feeling on this ship.
The American ship is just trailing the Blue Nose.
Angus should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old.
Eddie!
Coming in there! The Cubs are halyard back! Get to it, Matt!
Here's there's some kind of difficulty.
Seems to be something loose up there, I believe.
The console's foul!
Just once more, little girl, and you can rest.
Her last race and still undefeated, the Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
This is Rogers TV.
Focused on quality and convenience, there isn't much you won't find at Marie's Mini Mart. Home-style breads, sandwiches, plus a variety of artisan breads